Hey guys, Alex Kahn here, and I'm going to do a movie review for House of a Thousand Corpses, directed by Rob Zombie. And I saw this movie a long time ago, but I figured I'd do a movie review just because Universal Studios, both in California and Florida, have put out a haunted house, the House of a Thousand Corpses, based off of this movie. And they even have a Rob Zombie scare zone too, but let's not talk about that. It's pretty good though. Anyways, House of a Thousand Corpses. Um, this style of movie is definitely not for everybody. It's a horror movie, but it's not just a horror movie, it's a really gross horror movie. There's a guy who puts on the face of another person and starts taunting the daughter of the guy who owns that face. There's there's a scene where a guy sewed onto a fish body, and it's just really grotesque. That said, I actually do like this movie a lot. It's definitely not my first choice of a style, but there's a lot of things in this movie that I love. Like, I love the opening. I love how they introduce Captain Spaulding. I love seeing Captain Spaulding's his murder ride. I love seeing Doctor Satan later on in the movie. But there's a lot of things that it's kind of gross, but hey, whatever. But yeah, Rob Zombie was inspired by the movies that he grew up with in the '70s. So I guess a lot of the style that you see is basically influenced from the '70s. It's kind of got that grindhouse feel to it. Rob Zombie also goes on to say many times that he likes the villains. He wants the villains to win. So he basically tailored this movie for that approach. Now, I've let a lot of my friends borrow this movie. I think like three or four of my friends have borrowed this movie. Not a single one of them likes this movie. But I love it. I like that old that grindhouse feel to this movie. I just wish it was a little less grotesque, I suppose. But you can still have a horror movie, but not be so disgusting. Anyway, so this movie stars Chris Hardwick. He was the host of the Talking Dead, pretty funny guy, and it also stars Rainn Wilson, who plays Dwight Schrute on The Office. And you also have some other great actors in this movie. You have Bill Moseley playing one of the villains, also Sid Haig. I've met both of those actors. Sid Haig is a really interesting guy, and right now he's not doing so well apparently. I read a few days ago that he ended up in the ICU, which is the intense critical care unit for the hospital. I'm not sure what the deal is, but I wish him the best. And I've also met Bill Moseley, very nice guy. It's so weird meeting Bill Moseley because in person he's super nice, but his character in these House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects, he is not a nice guy at all. I think he makes Sid Haig's character look like a Boy Scout. I have not met Rob Zombie's wife yet. She plays Baby in these movies, but she is, I guess, one of the main trio. Very cool character too. Now those characters are very sinister, very villainous, but it's cool to see them operate. Like when I think of being out in the, I guess you call it the boonies, I've always had a fear that I'd run into a family like these guys, and they would just do all kinds of bad things to me. So I think that's what House of a Thousand Corpses is. It's playing on that fear that you go out into the out in the middle of nowhere and you run into a family that has no regards to any kind of civilized behavior, and they just kill you. So yeah, I actually do enjoy this movie a lot. But I think my favorite character is definitely Sid Haig's character. He plays Captain Spaulding, and he wears that clown makeup, and it's terrifying. Like, not in the movie, but just the thought of it, running into a guy in the middle of nowhere dressed up as a clown, and his behavior just kind of swings into murderous at any given moment. It's terrifying. But I love seeing his character, and I love the freaking set designs for Sid Haig's place. He basically runs a gas station which is connected to this museum of oddities. It's called the Museum of Monsters and Madmen, and I wish somebody would make a little fun house like that. Now I know Universal made this haunted maze, but I want something that also tackles the his murder ride. On the murder ride, he goes through all these little exhibits showing monsters like the Wolfman, but it also shows madmen like Ed Gein or Dr. Satan. I would love to see them make a funhouse like that. I'm talking about this movie because a lot of people that went to House of a Thousand Corpses, the haunted mazes at Universal Studios, they didn't really quite understand what they were seeing. Well, a lot of these, actually everything that you see in the haunted maze, it's straight from the movie. Like the first thing you see when you enter the building is you see Captain Spaulding, and he's greeting you as you enter his gas station, which turns into the Museum of Madmen and Monsters, or Museum of Monsters and Madmen. We see Dr. Satan later on operating on, I guess it's Chris Hardwick's character, maybe? I forgot. I didn't get a good look at him. But he does that in the movie too. I want to go off on a tangent. The House of a Thousand Corpses Haunted Maze at Universal Studios is my top favorite haunted house this year for Universal Studios Halloween Horror Nights. I love it. If you're a fan of the House of a Thousand Corpses, you got to go to either Universal Studios in California or Florida and check out this house. It's fantastic. But a lot of people who went to this house, they didn't like it. I think you either don't like it or you love it. I don't think there's any in between. But if you've seen the movie, it definitely helps you appreciate the vision that they were going for. It's straight from the movie, and I love it. So yeah, I really did enjoy this movie, but again, this movie is not for everybody. A lot of people do not like that movie, and I can definitely see why. It took me like 2 viewings before, I caught wind of the approach that Rob Zombie was going for, and I eventually started to like it myself. Like I actually do love like 70s grindhouse, but it's usually car movies that I love, obviously. But in this horror movie, it does work out. It's just really gross, and it alienates a lot of movie buffs, even horror buffs. But I actually do like this movie quite a bit. Devil's Reject is basically the sequel to this movie, which I didn't quite enjoy as much. I love seeing Captain Spaulding's his house or his museum, and I love seeing Dr. Satan. Devil's Rejects is definitely, some people like Devil's Rejects more. I like this one more. But great news coming out soon, or eventually. Rob Zombie's releasing 3 from Hell, and it's going to star the trio from Devil's Reject and House of a Thousand Corpses. So Sid Haig, Bill Moseley, and Rob Zombie's wife. I don't know how that's going to happen though, because at the end of Devil's Rejects, something happens, and I didn't think a sequel was possible, but maybe they're going to go the prequel route, or maybe they're going to go the route that somehow these 3 are still out and about. I don't know, but I'm excited for it. And I think it's going to be released at some film festival soon to be viewed. I don't know, but I want to see it. By the way, I love Rob Zombie's music. I love Dragula. I love The Boogeyman. And I freaking love Captain Spaulding's character. I love it. So I just want to talk about that. Just want to mention how I feel about The House of a Thousand Corpses, the movie, and also the Haunted Maze. So next year the house is going to be gone because they only keep these houses up for 1 year, for 1 season, and then they're gone. So if you're a fan of House of a Thousand Corpses, you got to go to Universal Studios and check this haunted house out. It's great. I love it. That's all I want to talk about. Thank you for watching my review on this movie.